Ethan had always believed that success came to those who never stopped moving. His days were a blur of deadlines, endless phone calls, and the pressure to prove himself in a world that never seemed to slow down. The noise in his mind was constant: plans, regrets, comparisons, fears, and the echo of every criticism he had ever heard. Even when he sat still, his thoughts kept running, chasing things he didn't even understand anymore. He told himself it was ambition, but deep down, he knew it was something else. It was fear. Fear of being left behind, fear of not being enough, fear of silence itself. Each morning began with a rush of anxiety that felt like caffeine for his nerves. Each night ended with exhaustion that sleep couldn't cure. He looked around his small apartment filled with papers, unfinished notes, and screens flashing with notifications, and felt a strange emptiness. He had everything except peace. One day, after another sleepless night, Ethan dragged himself to the university where he worked as an assistant researcher. His mentor, Professor Liam, watched him closely during their meeting. The old man had seen that look before, the eyes of someone drowning in their own thoughts. After the meeting, as Ethan packed his things, Liam said quietly, "You look tired, my boy." Ethan tried to smile. "Just the usual stress, sir. Deadlines never stop." The professor nodded slowly. "You remind me of myself many years ago. I thought if I could think harder, plan more, I could control everything. But thinking too much is like standing in a storm hoping to stop the rain with your hands." Ethan frowned, unsure what he meant. Liam continued, "You can't fill a cup that's already overflowing, Ethan. You must first empty it." Those words stayed in Ethan's mind all day. On his way home, he stared out the train window, watching the city rush by like a reflection of his own thoughts, fast, blurred, restless. "Empty your mind," he whispered to himself, but the more he tried, the louder everything became. That night he sat in darkness, listening to the hum of his computer, the ticking of the clock, the noise that never ended. For the first time, he realized it wasn't the world that was loud. It was him. All the overthinking, the worry, the desire to control what couldn't be controlled, it was all him. And somewhere deep inside, he made a quiet decision. He didn't know how yet, but he would learn to silence the storm within. A week later, Ethan accepted Professor Liam's invitation to spend a weekend at his cabin near the lake. The drive there felt unusually long, mostly because he had left his phone at home. The silence in the car felt heavy at first, as if his mind didn't know what to do without constant input. When he finally arrived, the cabin looked like something out of another time: wooden walls, a stone chimney, and no sign of modern noise. The air smelled of pine and calm. Liam greeted him with a smile, offering a cup of tea. They sat quietly, and Ethan fidgeted, unsure how to start a conversation. Finally, Liam lifted the teapot and began pouring tea into Ethan's cup. He didn't stop when it reached the brim. The tea spilled over, running across the table. Ethan jumped to stop it. "Professor, it's overflowing," he said. Liam looked at him calmly and replied, "Exactly. You are just like this cup. How can I teach you anything new when your mind is already full?" Ethan froze, watching the tea drip. In that moment, he understood the metaphor, though he didn't know how to fix it. He felt exposed, as if someone had opened his thoughts and showed him how cluttered they truly were. Later, Liam handed him a broom and said, "Go for a walk by the lake. Sweep your mind as you sweep the path." Ethan smiled weakly but did as told. The air was cool, the lake perfectly still, reflecting the tall trees like a mirror. Every step he took, he noticed something new: the crunch of leaves, the soft whisper of water, the far cry of a bird. For the first time in years, he felt himself slow down. He sat by the water, closed his eyes, and tried to think of nothing. But thoughts kept coming. His unfinished work, his bills, his disappointments. Every time one appeared, he whispered to himself, "Let go." The words felt strange at first, almost meaningless, but after repeating them again and again, his heartbeat softened. The thoughts didn't disappear, but they stopped shouting. He realized how much energy he had spent holding on to things that no longer mattered. He stayed there until the sun began to set, painting the lake gold. When he returned to the cabin, Liam was sitting by the fire. The old man smiled and said, "You can't force peace, Ethan. You can only create space for it." That night, for the first time in a long while, Ethan slept without dreams. The next morning, Ethan woke up earlier than usual. The sunlight filtered softly through the wooden shutters, and for a moment, he couldn't remember where he was. There was no buzzing phone, no alarm, no rush to be somewhere. Just stillness. He stepped outside, and the lake shimmered in the gentle morning light. Professor Liam was already sitting there, eyes closed, breathing slowly. Ethan sat beside him quietly, not wanting to disturb the moment. After a while, Liam opened his eyes and said, "Do you hear that?" Ethan listened but heard nothing. "Exactly," the professor said. "That's the sound of peace." Ethan chuckled, but deep down, he knew the old man was right. Peace wasn't something he could chase or buy, it was something he had to allow. They spent the day together without speaking much. Liam chopped wood, Ethan helped, and sometimes they just sat in silence, each lost in thought. The absence of words felt strange at first, but then it began to feel natural. Ethan realized that for years, his life had been filled with conversations that didn't mean anything. He had mistaken talking for living, noise for connection. As the day went on, he decided to walk deeper into the forest alone. With every step, he felt layers of tension peel off him. He began to understand what it meant to let go, not of possessions or people, but of control. All his life, he had tried to hold on to plans, outcomes, and expectations. But nature didn't cling. The trees swayed without fear of falling. The water flowed without asking where it was going. And for the first time, Ethan saw himself as part of that same rhythm. He reached a clearing and sat on a rock overlooking the water. Thoughts came again. Old memories, old regrets, but he didn't fight them this time. He just watched them come and go, like waves touching the shore and retreating again. He whispered softly, "Let go," each time one passed. Slowly, his breathing deepened, and his chest felt lighter. When he opened his eyes, the lake reflected the sky so perfectly it looked like glass. He smiled, realizing that stillness wasn't emptiness, it was fullness without chaos. When he returned to the cabin that evening, Liam was lighting a lantern. The professor looked up and said, "You found it, didn't you?" Ethan nodded. "I think I did," and Liam only smiled, as if he had been waiting for that answer all along. When Ethan returned to the city, he carried a strange calm within him. The noise was still there, cars honking, people shouting, phones ringing, but something inside him had changed. The chaos no longer owned him. For a while, he managed to hold that stillness close, like a quiet flame inside his chest. But soon, life tested him again. His project at work, the one he had spent months preparing, was rejected by the board. His boss accused him of being careless, a friend betrayed his trust, and suddenly the old noise began to creep back. The storm inside him that he thought had ended returned, whispering that peace was a lie and silence was weakness. For a few days, he found himself slipping into his old habits, checking his phone every few minutes, replaying conversations in his head, losing sleep over things he couldn't change. The calm lake within him turned restless once more. One evening, after a particularly hard day, he sat in his car with his head on the steering wheel, feeling defeated. He wanted to escape again, to run back to the cabin and hide from the world. But then, like a whisper in the dark, he heard the professor's voice in his mind saying, "You can't receive anything new until you empty the old." He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He remembered the lake, the silence, the sound of his own heartbeat in the woods. He didn't fight the thoughts this time. He let them pass, one after another, without grabbing onto them. The betrayal, the failure, the doubt, all of it came and went like clouds drifting across a wide sky. Slowly, the tightness in his chest eased. He began to understand that peace wasn't about escaping problems, it was about staying still in the middle of them. The storm would come and go, but it didn't have to take him with it. When he got home, he didn't open his laptop. He didn't scroll through his phone. He simply made a cup of tea and sat by the window, watching the city lights blink like distant stars. In that moment, he felt something powerful. A quiet mind was not empty, it was alive, alert, and deeply free. The noise of the world still surrounded him, but inside, there was silence. And in that silence, he found the strength to begin again. Days turned into weeks, and Ethan began to live differently. He no longer woke up chasing thoughts. He woke up listening, to the sound of the morning, to the rhythm of his own breath. The people at work noticed something unusual about him. He wasn't in a hurry anymore, yet he got more done. He wasn't reacting to criticism or setbacks with panic or anger. Instead, he listened, processed, and responded with calm. One of his colleagues asked him, "You're not the same person you were a month ago. What happened to you?" Ethan smiled and said, "I stopped carrying things that weren't mine." It became his quiet philosophy. Every time life threw noise at him, opinions, negativity, uncertainty, he didn't hold on to it. He let it pass through him, like wind through an open window. And that change began to shape everything around him. Meetings that used to feel stressful became opportunities for focus. Conversations that once drained him now brought understanding. People who had once frustrated him no longer had the power to disturb his peace. He had learned that a calm mind didn't mean avoiding life's chaos, it meant walking through it without losing balance. One evening, as he sat in the office alone finishing a report, he looked at his reflection in the glass. The man staring back at him was no longer restless or lost. He saw clarity in his eyes, the kind that comes not from knowing everything but from accepting what he couldn't control. He realized that letting go didn't mean giving up. It meant trusting that life had its own rhythm and that peace was found not in holding on but in releasing. That night, he took a long walk through the city. The same streets that once made him anxious now felt different. He noticed the sound of rain tapping on the pavement, the soft laughter of strangers, the glow of lights on wet roads. He felt connected to it all, yet separate from the noise. For the first time, he wasn't trying to figure life out. He was simply living it. When he got home, he wrote in his journal, "Peace isn't something you find once and keep forever. It's something you choose, again and again, every day." As he closed his notebook, he smiled. He knew there would be more storms, more noise, more moments of doubt. But he also knew he had the one thing that could never be taken away, the power of a quiet mind. Years passed, and Ethan's life took turns he could never have planned. He became a consultant, teaching young professionals about leadership and clarity of thought, not through grand speeches but through calm presence. People listened to him not because his words were loud, but because they carried the weight of silence behind them. Whenever someone came to him with anxiety or confusion, he would smile and share the same story that changed him, the story of the overflowing cup. He would say, "When your mind is full of fear, there's no space for wisdom. Empty it, and you'll see clearly again." Many didn't understand it right away, just as he hadn't, but in time, they all felt the truth of it. Despite his success, Ethan never let himself forget the quiet cabin by the lake or the man who had shown him a different way of living. One autumn morning, he decided to visit the place again. The road seemed shorter now, maybe because he no longer carried the weight of his old thoughts. When he arrived, the cabin was still standing, but it felt emptier. The air was filled with the scent of pine and memory. Inside, everything was covered with a thin layer of dust. On the wooden table near the window lay a folded letter with his name on it, written in Liam's familiar handwriting. With trembling hands, Ethan opened it. The letter said, "Peace doesn't come from having control, Ethan. It comes from releasing your grip. You were never meant to tame life, only to dance with it. Remember, the lake is always calm beneath the surface, even when the wind disturbs the top." Tears welled in Ethan's eyes as he read the words again and again. He stepped outside and walked down to the lake. The surface rippled gently under the soft touch of the breeze, reflecting the orange sky of late afternoon. He sat there for a long time, thinking about everything he had learned, everything he had unlearned, and the man who had taught him how to breathe in silence. As he watched the reflection shimmer, he realized something profound. The goal was never to empty the mind completely, but to fill it only with what mattered: kindness, awareness, and peace. He whispered to the wind, "Thank you, Professor." The water rippled softly, as if answering him back. Ethan smiled, his heart quiet, his mind still. He finally understood that peace wasn't a place you visit, it was something you become.